All right, I'll start doing the roll call. If you've called it to order, I think that sounded like a call to order. So, Mary,
I am here.
great. Catherine,
Present.
Jeanette,
Present.
Ernest,
Present.
Jessica,
Present.
Wolfgang,
Here.
Sue,
Here.
Tabia,
Here.
Andy,
Here.
and Lindell.
Here.
Okay, thanks, Todd. Okay, next on our agenda is our recitation of our mission. So let's all recite. Act
Act
as a
Strong
advocate of justice and equal opportunity, providing citywide leadership and guidance in the area of civil rights.
All right. Woohoo. All right. And next we come to matters by the public. Do we have members of the public? If you are on
Molly
by,
Conger is in the audience.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Todd.
Just noting that we have one member of the public in the audience, Molly Conger.
Okay. If you'd like to speak, you can raise your hand, or how do you do that if you're on the phone? Remind me that.
It'll be *9.
*9. Anybody on the phone? We will, of course, have another opportunity for matters by the public later in the meeting if anyone wants to speak later. All right. Hearing no matters by the public, we will move on. Commission response to matters by the public. I think we will move right by. Next up is minutes from the March 18th regular meeting. Do I hear a motion to approve those minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Second?
A second.
I know I keep forgetting that we really don't need these things under Martha's rules, but you know, it's okay. We're all on the same page. Okay, everyone who is in favor of approving the minutes, please either give a thumbs up or say aye verbally.
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed to the approval of the minutes? Okay, wonderful. The next up is the chair update. And I have a couple things to update. I think I'll leave, one of the issues to the report from the Housing Committee, which has been quite busy in the last month and has had, I think, some really successful progress. But I did want to share with you all the conversations that have been had largely by email with the city manager. I think you all got some report on that, but the city manager was extremely receptive. As I was writing one of those angry legal letters, and while I was in the middle of writing that, the city manager essentially agreed to modify the description of the position, to rename it a director, and to reset the salary so that it was at the much higher level comparable to the director of the PCRB. So I never even sent my nastygram, and we made that great progress, and so that worked out. That worked out really well. I think we've also had a lot of success on the issue of moving the right to counsel for tenants and eviction proceedings along, but I think I'll defer that to our discussion during the housing committee update, because that really involved, that entire committee. So I think that is it for me as a report from the chair. Any questions or comments about that? All right, Todd, we have an OHR staff report next on our agenda.
I think that's still only me. So I'll make it brief. You saw the attached written report to the agenda packet, hopefully. Always reach out if you have any questions about anything on there. No colorful chart, still not entering data for this year yet. Trying to compile, I have all the data for 220 compiled, but need to put it all into the annual report. So that just takes a little while because there's a couple of steps I got to do for that, but it's in progress. As you see, many things are, if you read that little report. I can just say that we, have had a lot of people contacting the office, which is kind of what's taken my time lately. Some of the things that people are contacting me about are a little bit more involved. So I always prioritize that. So if that's the case, some of the other administrative things get put on the back burner a little bit, but everything will progress in time. Only other thing I'd mention as an update that's not on the written report is under the facilitation and leadership piece of the outreach area. I've been working with a number of different people on setting up a meeting about equity in outdoor spaces. Outdoor spaces are obviously very important for a lot of people right now. It's a great way to de-stress during a pandemic, but not all outdoor spaces feel welcoming as they could for all people. And so there's a growing group that's interested in talking more about that. So the next meeting for that is scheduled for Tuesday, April 20th from 3 to 4 p.m. at the new botanical garden site, which I've not seen or been to. So it should be relatively accessible for people, even if you use mobility assistance and so forth. And looks like Catherine has a question.
Oh, I not to interrupt whenever you're done. Good. Okay. The question is just about when you're talking about outdoor spaces, is there any focus at all on the downtown mall as an outdoor space that should be open to all? Since much of the downtown mall has been privatized and there really is no public seating on the downtown mall.
That's a great question. I don't know that he's brought it up yet. There are a lot of different things that people are considering, whether it's trails, parks, but I think that's a great point. And so I think it's likely that it will come up. We've had one meeting thus far that was sort of a breakout from the mobility summit. It was a smaller group. It's grown probably twice its size already, just in some new people being interested. So I imagine that will come up because it's getting to be a more diverse group. So thanks for bringing that up.
Just to follow up on that, didn't there used to be more benches? Like, do I remember that? I mean, it feels like there were more benches and they like affirmatively took some of them away. Is that accurate?
My understanding is that it was to reduce the use of the downtown mall by people without stable housing. And so to make it less friendly, benches were removed at some point. They were supposed to be replaced and then never were replaced. I may be incorrect, but that's how I've understood it. And then with that, also, restaurants have increasingly encroached on the downtown mall space, so that really there is no public space, although part of the downtown mall is officially labeled a park.
There are still some benches, I know, particularly down the area closer to the post office area, that end of the mall. I have been known to sit on the wonderful little sculpture in front of the co-op, the artist co-op. Nobody's kicked me off of it yet.
Jeanette, I see that your hand was raised. Thanks for
Yeah.
that too.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm in support of Catherine's comments about also including the pedestrian mall. And I just wanted to say the Move to Health Equity Initiative has a mobility subgroup. Are they involved in this?
So Diana Webb, who I believe is part of that,
Yeah.
is that correct? I always forget who's involved in everything.
Yes.
She has been part of the discussion. So
Okay.
she will be at the next meeting as well.
Okay, great. I'd be interested in getting the details of that as we're involved in that mobility subgroup as well.
Great. I'll certainly send you the meeting details. And by the way, it's an in-person meeting. It's actually going to be outdoors in person. So kind of something different, which is apropos probably given the topic. So and that's all for my report. If anyone has any other questions, please let me know.
I have a question about what you know about the hiring process and who will be involved in that. And if you know, timing, what details, if any, beyond the fact that they're going to have a better salary range, which is good.
Yeah, that's a great question. I probably know just about as much as you do. You may actually know more. I am certainly happy to reach out to Chip. I periodically check the human resources job postings to see what the status of it was, but I haven't done it in a few days. I think for a while it was not posted. And then it was still in the archive of position descriptions with the new, I don't think it had changed. I can't remember if it changed from director to manager, but I did see the salary change, which was positive. So I'll check that again. But I can also send an email to Chip to find out who's going to be, on the interview panel or how they're going to handle that and try to find out more. I'm not even exactly sure what the status of the HR director is currently. So I'll put the questions to Chip and let you know.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone recalls, because this was a while ago, but was any member of the commission, for example, involved in any way in the hiring process for the last director?
Yes. Yes, there were two of us that I can recall. I think that maybe have been just two of us on that. I happen to have been one of them.
I think it may make sense to be proactive about that and just express our interest as a commission in both knowing what the process will be and having some level of involvement from the commission, sort of in the theory that it's easier to ask people before it's set up than to ask them to change it later on. Todd, do you want to do that? Or I'm happy to do that if you prefer that.
Either way, I am happy to do it. Chip seems both responsive to you and me. So happy to do it. And then if, I'll copy you on it and then maybe that'll spur a conversation if that sounds good.
Oh, great. Jessica says the application deadline is May 14th. So that's actually, that means it's, moving along. Todd, the other question I had for you was about the issue you raised with regard to attorney representation for complainants. And I know that we agreed to talk about it at this meeting, but I wasn't sure kind of under which of the sort of agenda items that falls.
That's a great question. I didn't put it on there because I didn't have any new information to share, but if you'd like, I can just speak on it briefly. And I've mentioned it at the retreat and probably on numerous other occasions, but still pondering what the process might be to encourage council to set aside some funding, much like the template that Mary set forth for funding for people who are facing eviction. I'm interested in seeing a fund available for people who would like legal representation as they go through the complaint and investigation process. Because having done a couple now, I realized how much there's a power imbalance when the respondent typically has legal counsel the respondent is often a corporation or a business or something like that that has legal counsel either already available or at least resources to find it quickly. Whereas the complainants are usually individuals, often individuals with limited funds to pay for an attorney. And I feel like that results in an unfair situation. Even if it were to go to mediation, we have one case right now that is going to mediation, I hope, if the respondent agrees to it. And the complainant has consulted an attorney, but it took like 4 months to find somebody that would even provide some advice. And they're not representing them, but they provided some free advice at least. But in the mediation, the complainant will still be basically pro se, while the respondent will probably come in with an attorney, or it may be solely represented by an attorney. So yeah, so that's a big concern. I know that Wolfgang did a little bit of research. I intend to. It's on the list. Unfortunately, I haven't really done anything with it, but I want to find out if there are any other commissions or offices of human rights that are doing this, and what maybe we could look to as a model. I don't think there's anybody in Virginia doing it that of the human rights offices that have enforcement power. So we may be treading new ground there. And that's all I really have to say about it. I'm certainly interested in working on it more. And if anybody wants to help me, I'd be glad to have the help.
Jessica, were you volunteering or raising your hand to say something?
Volunteering.
Well, I was wondering whether it makes sense to create a committee on this. I mean, it sounds like some real research needs to be done, and, reaching out to other localities. And I mean, Todd, you do a lot, but it seems like a lot. And what do folks think about creating another ad hoc commission to address this issue?
I think it sounds good. I'd be happy to serve on it.
All right. Well, we have Jessica, right? Also, you've now turned your volunteering for a committee. Is that okay? Well, that's great. We've got 2 folks. Anybody else? Okay, Lindell. Great. So that does raise the issue that those need to be like officially publicly noticed meetings, right? But now that we have extra hours, that should be fine. Okay.
I just have to keep up with the minutes.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions or comments for Todd on his report?
Yeah, I wondered if he was able to get a city staffing chart.
Yes, I do have the old city staffing chart,
Yeah,
which
I'm
doesn't
looking
list the
for a
Office
new
of Human
one.
Rights. Yeah, here, I'll share it. Chip did send me one. It's funny though, because he was very kind in allowing me to even share it with you. It is a hand-drawn chart. So
Yay.
I'm going to share my screen so you can see it. Hopefully I do this properly. Here we go. But we are actually on it, which is good. So here comes, hopefully.
Okay.
Let me see if I can make it bigger. Okay. There you go. Can you see it?
Mm-hmm.
The changes, but it's nice to see the Office of Human Rights is on there, as well as the PCRB. And yeah, that's that. There you go.
Right. Thank you.
Where is the diversity, equity? Oh,
That's ready.
is that what ready is?
I
Okay.
can also email.
So the city manager does not oversee the city attorney and the finance director and the clerk of council.
No,
That's a
council
good
appoints them.
point.
Those are functions of city council.
Well, that's fair. That is very interesting. So the deputy, Oh, so there's multiple deputy city managers and Ready is the diversity, equity, inclusion, right? Okay, got that. Okay, well, this is actually quite interesting.
Mhm.
And again, this is a draft. I don't know if he's gonna change it more, but this is what Chip sent me.
It's really interesting that the Department of Parks and Rec is also under the Ready Deputy City Manager, which feeds into the mobility question that you just brought up. I think that's
Right?
great. It's not under operations.
Which also is a good point too, that the ADA office is not under the Ready Deputy City Manager's office. It's still under Neighborhood Development Services. And so I know some conversations that Allison Fincham and I were having that I can speak to more in the next part. But since we're already on the topic, I was curious what y'all think about that.
But can you speak a little bit more to that? That's
So
not,
yeah, so the ADA office currently resides under Neighborhood Services, largely due to like the high technical aspect of their work, working alongside Public Works and Neighborhood Services. But in the advent of this new, of the new Ready office, there could be a better argument that it would, I don't know, serve the citizens of Charlottesville better if somebody going through an ADA complaint would more likely look to the Ready office than, you know, somebody working with zoning and like sidewalk ordinances. So it's an opportunity to consider that.
Yeah, especially since it is more than zoning and sidewalks, right?
Certainly, it is a people-centered service, so maybe we could put it in an office that is people-centered.
Right.
and is that something that you all, I mean, I don't want to necessarily jump to the committee report, but is that something that you all are looking at
Yeah.
in the accessibility committee?
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
And it makes great sense. I mean, human services is under that, social services is under that. And whether you put the ADA in one or the other of those pieces, it makes much more sense than being under operations.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Okay. Any other questions or comments at Todd's report?
Thank you, Todd, for providing that.
Yeah, thanks to Chip for being so open and willing to share it.
Okay, well, as it turns out, the very next thing on our agenda is the report from the accessibility committee. So this flows quite nicely. So I can turn that over to you all for the report from the accessibility committee.
Yeah, we can keep it brief too. We met about 2 weeks ago. Just a first kind of sit down meeting with Allison Fincham, the new ADA coordinator for the ADA office, to discuss, you know, what are her priorities and how can the HRC support that. We know that it's her responsibility to staff the ADA committee, which directly feeds into the work of the ADA office. And one really exciting thing that they are doing is they are updating the transition plan for the city of Charlottesville. And there's actually an opportunity potentially for us to be involved with this, as historically a couple members of the Human Rights Commission and the head of the Human Rights Office have historically sat on that committee. And so we could potentially, if that invitation is open in the future, we could be part of determining what the goals the markers for the city should be in terms of ADA compliance, but also beyond that into accessibility. So that's something that I think we're discussing. Other than that, just had a good kind of meeting of what her priorities are in terms of increasing city resident participation, the overall status of the ADA committee meetings, and then discussing various barriers that we think are important to address in terms of city residents communicating with the city. So it's good. I think that's all. Sue, did you have anything you want to add? Oh, you're muted.
I'm leaving it totally up to you to report. The meeting was just before I left. I think it was hours before I left on vacation, and
You were like secretly packing in the background. Yeah.
yeah, and I'm just looking forward to further exploration of it. You might say that a member of the public who has been very involved with issues of involving the ADA has attended our meeting, and we're getting a certain amount of interesting feedback from that person, which I think is going to help us as we figure out just how far we want to go with this. But I do think we're very interested in exploring moving the that office out of operations and into something more connected to the lives of people.
Yeah, that was a big focus of the meeting, that and the transition plan, because the transition plan, the last one they did was in 2013. One before that was like 1997. So they don't happen all that often. So it's a really great opportunity for us to maybe be part of shaping what the next maybe 10 years of accessibility in Charlottesville look like.
So I know the title is ADA, but when we had talked, I think at our strategic planning meeting about accessibility, we were also sort of thinking about issues related to language access for limited English proficient folks. And I'm just wondering if does that fall within the purview of that office at all, or who knows? So
no, but I mean, it's something that we as the accessibility committee can keep looking into independently. I think it's okay that we have different priorities as long as they overlap.
That has been traditionally just concerned with infrastructure, physical infrastructure. All the meetings that I've ever attended, all they talked about was streets and curb cuts and things like that. But I think we're hoping to maybe get them to think a little broader about what Americans for Disability is all about.
well, and maybe that it's a different office that has, sort of jurisdiction over this issue. But I think I had the sense that, during our February meeting that that was also an issue that we were concerned about. And I'm just wondering kind of how we begin those conversations and actually with whom or what office, because I honestly don't know the answer to that. I don't know if that's something that the accessibility committee has grappled with yet. Todd?
I'm going to forward that one to Todd.
Yeah.
Todd's done some work there.
I'll chime in a little bit, and I don't want to put Brian on the spot, but I asked him that question today because I was thinking about our own webpage, the OHR's webpage, and I was going to start putting Spanish content on there. And I started thinking about how people would even get to our webpage, which is buried a couple of layers into the city's website. And looking at the city's homepage, there's not, on the very first page, there's no anything that's not in English, and if I type in the search bar Spanish, you get a few kind of search results that show documents that have been translated into Spanish by different offices. If you type Espanol, you get nothing. So it's kind of interesting. So I was thinking about just starting to put Spanish content on our webpage just to see how that affects search results on the city's webpage. But I also asked, if Brian knew of any directory of people, city staff that actually speak different languages. and he wasn't aware of it. I was thinking about then reaching out to human resources about that. They may have some record of it. I get I've had a number of calls from other offices like utilities and city manager and human services when they have somebody call in Spanish and they don't know what the person's saying, and they'll just transfer them to me. So yeah, I think that there's definitely a need. And Spanish is not the only language, obviously, that people are talking and have needs to address. So anyway, I can certainly dig around a little bit from the city staff angle and just see what records we actually have of who speaks different languages. And, I'm going to start tinkering with it in that.
There was a time quite a few years back where there was a presidential executive order. I think it was actually Bill Clinton's executive order that required cities, states, government localities to have written language access plans that actually just addressed proactively like how they're going to deal with people speaking other languages. And I have to confess that I actually don't know, that seems like a thing that could have been rescinded under, a particular president that we used to have. I don't know if that's still in effect, but I think it would be useful to ask the city if they have a written language access plan. And that's sort of a place to start. One, like whether on paper it looks good, and whether two, we feel like they're actually doing what it says. So I don't know, Todd, is that something that you could kind of initially ask for?
Sure, I can certainly ask to see if it exists. And then I'm also wondering, again, like I'm always curious what other places are doing that are maybe ahead of the game. I wonder if there's some examples out there that we could maybe present to.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen written language access plans from other cities in places that have, particularly large LEP populations. So is that like appropriately kind of housed, Wolfgang, in the accessibility committee? Is that like, I mean, I guess I was like, I want to make sure you guys are comfortable with like adding, having all of that in one committee. It seems like it makes sense. On the other hand, it could also be divided into two committees if it seemed like too much, or kind of what is your feeling about that?
I think a large focus of the strategic goal that we outlined was like citizen access to the city. And so within that goal, it fits very well. At this point, I don't think Sue can chime in here too, but I don't think we're overwhelmed with the level of stuff that we're taking on. So happy to do that. But if somebody wants to charge in with a subcommittee, all their burning ideas, you'd be more than welcome.
I totally agree. We got, I won't say bogged down or even sidelined, but just talking to the new ADA director or person in charge.
Coordinator. Yeah.
Coordinator sent us off into that direction for our first meeting. And that doesn't mean at all that we're giving up, from my perspective anyway, that we're giving up on any of the other accessibility issues, including language, including hearing impaired, I don't think, one would assume that these ad hoc committees don't meet once and that's the end of it. So I wouldn't worry about us being able to get into other areas once we've dealt with this particular area.
Well, that's great. And I guess if we like obtained the language access plan and felt like it needed, a huge investment of our time, we can always kind of rethink that. But for now, this makes a lot of sense for you all to have that as part of your mission. Questions, comments for our fabulous accessibility committee? Okay, great.
Thank you.
Yep, sorry.
Thank you for your work.
Yes, agreed. Thank you for your work. Okay, so the next we have the Housing Committee, which has been fairly busy. Tabia, you want to give the report?
Yes, I do. So I'm reading from Chantel's summary. So there's a lot. So stop me if I'm going too fast. So the housing subcommittee coordinated with a number of organizations to put pressure on City Council, Charlottesville DSA, FAR, PHA, Charlottesville Low Income Housing Coalition, the Office of Delegate Sally Hudson, Legal Aid Justice Center, and the Equity Center were key organizations we worked with. Piedmont Housing, Michael Monaco came to our March 31st meeting that we had before the April 5th City Council meeting. And he presented their eviction prevention program. And we were able to ask questions and understand their existing programs for their tenants. The presentation also showed that even though there are prevention programs, there's still a gap with tenants having legal aid, legal representation when eviction program prevention fails. Mary connected with a number of experts in creating programs for tenants' rights to counsel. Through her work, we were able to get a better idea of the real cost associated with the program. Of course.
Okay, did everybody lose Tabia? Is it
Yeah,
me?
yeah.
Okay, I never know because whether it's just my connection here in Mexico or whether everybody lost her. Let's give her a minute and see if she can get back on. Okay, I'm gonna give her another minute because I think she's, written all of this out and I could probably fill in, but I wouldn't be as thorough as she would be.
I've got the report from Chantel.
Oh, you did? You
Yeah,
wanna-
I think she sent it to to folks just to make sure. So I didn't do the work like Tabia did, but I could read the report.
Well, why don't you read the report and maybe Tabia will be back on in order to participate in the substantive conversation to answer any questions.
Sounds great. Where did she leave off?
We were exploring data. We were gathering data about what the actual cost of the program would be. I think was the last thing she said.
Right. Okay. Okay. Mary connected with a number of experts. We got that. Elaine from Legal Aid and Jake Gold from Sally Hudson's office. Did she read that? So DSA provided their Action Network account. So they created, did she read all that? Okay. DSA provided their Action Network account so that we could create automatic email alerts to City Council. Mary wrote a letter, team supported efforts, edits, and all the partners were invited to provide feedback. Chantal and Mary then tag teamed a media response and spoke at public comment at the budget meeting. Number of news articles and TV reports. The outcomes are that City Council verbally committed to funding the right to counsel and are looking for CARES funding to do that. Angela Chalfie, the Executive Director of Legal Aid, has thanked us for our effective campaign, and they are now in negotiations with the city manager, focusing on getting funding for 2 consecutive years. Councilman Payne and other councilors have recommended that we extend this to the Albemarle Board of Supervisors. I believe under the theory that people don't really know where they are. We are a region, and it would make sense if anybody in Charlottesville and Albemarle could get this. And that's it. That was the end of the report. It's amazing work you guys did.
I mean, I think it really, like, a lot of people worked on this, but it was kind of interesting how it came together and like so many groups coalesced around this issue at the same time, and then to hear the council like so quickly, you know, sort of at least conceptually agree, you know, that we still so Tavia, Catherine read Chantel's report, and then we all started, you know, applauding a little bit, but I wonder if you want to, you know, to add anything to that report.
No, sorry about that. I never lose connection until I'm talking. Give me a second. No, let me just, I don't think I have anything to add to that.
Did you jump on in time to hear us express appreciation and for the good work and how amazing it was that this got passed? I don't know if you heard that, but.
I did not, but thank you.
I know this is for another day, but I did express concern, just sort of informally, about a 2-year contract that relies on temporary funding, because 2 years from now, when the city actually has to like put in, you know, their own real money, it seems to me like the, you know, that presents some questions. And I'm not to say I'm completely thrilled that you know, what the council has said and the commitment they have articulated, but that is just a worry that I want to say out loud. And I think it behooves the commission to sort of continue to follow this issue to make sure that in you know, in subsequent years when that money doesn't exist, that the commitment remains there, because we're not talking about, as I understand it, we're not talking about what has happened in other cities where a law is actually passed saying tenants have a right to a lawyer, that a law that's enforceable. We're talking about the city creating a program that it funds, which it could then decide not to fund. And I'm not suggesting that they want to do that. You know, all I hear is very positive stuff, but I just want to raise that as an issue, that it does, for me, it does raise a concern that it's not a kind of long-term enforceable right, and it requires vigilance by the groups that were involved in bringing this about.
I think vigilance makes a lot of sense. I think one argument for getting this up and going is that the state is often lags behind progressive cities, and that by demonstrating its efficacy and its good effects, we make it easier then for the General Assembly to allow us to pass a law, right, that would make that a right. So I think, I don't know what the plans are for capturing data. I'm given the DSA's amazing work with data, I'm sure there is a plan, but I would think that would be really critical, is and maybe even partnering. You know, this seems like a perfect UVA student project, for example, to not just collect the data about how many people were served, but to really do some interviewing about what it meant to not lose housing, to be ready down the road.
Do we know when the 2 years begin? Like, when does this start?
I don't know the answer to that. I assume it's when the new budget is passed and goes into effect, but that's a good question. I'm just speculating. I don't know. And obviously it takes some time to like create, to hire people, right? These are new people who somebody will have to hire and, you know, get up and going. So I agree. I think, you know, Catherine, in one of your communications, you said, you know, Charlottesville should be a, you know, a sort of place where we, what was the language you use, kind of try out and try out new progressive ideas to show the state what is possible. And this seems like a place where we could do that. Given our like geographic limitation, I don't know what role, if any, we should or could have in encouraging the county to do the same thing. You know, I mean, we could, you know, presumably we could write a letter saying, you know, we think it makes sense. I mean, it doesn't make sense for somebody to walk in the legal aid office and say, yes, you get a lawyer because you live in the jurisdiction of the city, and no, you don't get a lawyer because you live, you know, a mile away. But I wonder if people have thoughts about that.
I don't
I
know if I
haven't thought
should.
about it, but I see Jeanette has her hand raised, so I was gonna mention that first. Sorry, go ahead.
That's what I was just gonna say. I don't know if I should just interrupt or raise my hand, what's most helpful, but I was
I think
actually
on
gonna,
Zoom, you should just talk because sometimes it's hard to see everybody's hand at the same time, but go right ahead. Sorry.
I was actually responding to the earlier comments that adding on to what Catherine was saying. I think the city's practice tends to be to work with nonprofits to do a lot of these kind of innovative programs, similar to how we're working with the Food Equity Initiative with the city, and then it becomes that nonprofit's burden to raise those funds. And so I completely agree that advocacy at the state level could help support that. And then the other thing I was going to add is that the Equity Center has I'm forgetting the name of it now, but one of its core focus, this is the UVA Equity Center, one of its core areas of focus is data, equity data collection. And so they might be a good partner in terms of putting interns on that project.
One of the asks from, I mean, Chip Boyles had said he had been in negotiations with the Legal Aid Justice Center about conditions under which they would, you know, consider accepting funding and doing this program. And of course, I wasn't involved in any of those discussions, but one of the asks and one of the things they articulated that they believe to make this work is that in addition to lawyers, they think it's absolutely essential to have an organizer, both to be, you know, getting out there and letting people know about their rights and organizing about this issue. And that might also be a person that I wouldn't say could be the collector of data, but that we could work with closely about making sure the data is gathered. I mean, all in all, I want to say, I think that this was really like astonishing and fabulous work to have Charlottesville look like it's the first city in the South to take on this issue successfully in such a short time. And so, like, kudos really to everybody who worked on that.
Mary, I want to point out that Michael Payne is in the attendees and has his hand raised if you'd like me to give him a chance to respond.
Yeah, great.
All right, Michael, here I come with the allowing to talk function. There you go.
Can you hear me? Okay. Just a couple questions came up. So about the timeline, and you may already know this info, but just wanted to highlight the funding is coming from the American ARP, and that will come in 2 tranches to the city, the first in May, and then the second half next, basically a year from now almost. So the goal is to use that first half of money to fund the request. And that would again become available in May. And that's when that 2-year period would really begin, is once the funding and hire is made. It's not so much tied to our normal budget cycle as the stimulus money is, and would definitely 100% agree that your point is 100% right about the need to, that stimulus money is one time, and, it's a permanent need. So that's going to be a longer term thing. And would just say, it may not come from the Office of Human Rights or Human Rights Commission, but as citizens emailing the Board of Supervisors, I think will be helpful, because they're going to get the stimulus money too. And they have just as much of an ability to fund this program. And I think it'll just expand the number of people reached. So that may be redundant information for you all, but just wanted to chime in case that's of any help. And again, thank you all for the advocacy on the issue. But that's it.
Thank you. That was actually really, really helpful. And thank you for being here and participating. Oh, folks have questions for our city councilor?
I just wanted to express gratitude for your letter of support, Michael, regarding this issue. Councilor Payne, my apologies.
I just wanted to say my appreciation to the ad hoc committee. I know we're all on a team, but it's you guys that were working on this. And Catherine, specifically what you said about being trendsetters, like that's why I want to be on this commission, to do things of change. And this is like a positive win. And I'm proud to be a part of this commission. And thank you guys for all the hard work that you guys are doing. I really appreciate it.
Well, I have to say, as soon as we got the sense that this was being approved by city council, I got an email from somebody else saying, oh, now you have to take on housing zoning laws. The housing committee has other stuff to do. So, I'm sure that the ad hoc housing committee has many other issues that it can evaluate and decide about taking on. But given the importance of housing, I know we already have 3, commissioners on that ad hoc committee, but I do encourage anyone who's like deeply drawn to this issue to join, because there's still lots and lots of work to be done. And Tobia and Chantel are, awesome co-chairs, and we have shown we can get stuff done. So let's get some more stuff done.
I just want to acknowledge what Jeanette wrote in the comments about couldn't we work with advocating with the program for community engagement? You mentioned about getting the word out about and advocating. That sounds like something we could do in our engagement committee.
So as a relative newcomer, I don't really know about the engagement committee. Like, who is that? What has it done? How often does it meet? Can you just kind of fill me in on that?
I think, Sue probably has a lot more history, but it's something we talked about in our retreat is in bringing back. So I don't think we have met, but I think that we decided who was on that. I think I volunteered for that. We haven't met.
All right, so we have to look back in the minutes. But obviously, even if you didn't volunteer in February, you can still volunteer to join that.
I'd have to look back at some of the things. Some of the things that Community Engagement Committee did were maybe helping organize community events to inform the public about what we're doing. Other thing was that group was involved in the Bridge Builders Award that adds names to the bridge going over the railroad tracks on West Main Street. And we didn't do anything last year on that. But we were basically charged by the city with being the entity that would take over the whole process of getting names and deciding who might be a bridge builder. That's one of the big things that committee did for a couple of years. My thought on ad hoc committees is just because you had one once, you don't have to have one again. you, every year you kind of reorganize and say, okay, we need this year and we don't need that this year. But community engagement is actually part of our charge.
And it seems to me with the world getting, maybe back to at least the idea of in-person events, sometime. Okay, so from
Can I just add to
Wolfgang.
that?
Yeah, of course.
Oh,
Go.
were you waiting to go, Wolfgang? I apologize.
Oh, not at all. I was just looking back at the retreat notes.
Yeah, when I
Sorry.
first joined the commission, I know Charlene was so active, and Todd, you did too, I'm sure, in going to community events, and this was pre-COVID. And I think that's a great support role that we can play with the staff in terms of being, because if there's more than one person out and about talking about human rights, attending festivals, spreading the word about what we offer. And so I believe I was signed up for that committee too, but with COVID, it got derailed.
So the notes indicate that Jessica and Jeanette volunteered for it. If anyone else would like to volunteer, that's great. I think it would be terrific if the committee could convene between now and our next meeting and maybe give a report just about, what you see in the near to medium term future. I mean, I know it's been so challenging over the last year to engage with anybody, but I think it is, it's important, as you said, it's in our charge, and we should, start actively thinking about that again.
There's actually an interesting overlap here potentially, since for the research project that we're supposed to do as part of our work, to look into if there's any issues of access or barriers in reaching the HRC. I see some overlap between the work that the ADA Accessibility Committee is doing, but then also what the Engagement Committee is doing, to see if there's any issues with how people reach out and engage with us in the first place.
Yeah, another point of overlap too is that the Engagement Committee used to hold the Disability Awareness PSA project that the Accessibility Committee is kind of the keeper of now. So that might be another way to think about how can we spread that around, or who might really want to hold that. I think it's still a really valuable thing that is unfinished as of yet.
All right, so maybe we can add a report from the Engagement Committee to the, agenda for, what month are we in? We're in April, for the May meeting. All right. All right, but we have another opportunity for comments by the public, but just before we get to that, were there any additional questions or comments before we move to that?
No, not about this. I have just a question about just what's happening. I don't know if this is the place for it, but just what's happening in our country with like police violence. Is there anything that we can say as a Human Rights Commission about that?
I think that's a terrific question. I don't know where it goes on the agenda, but I suggest we just add it, to have this discussion right now. What, it's really hard to pick up the paper every single day. What is the sense of the commission about the action that we should take?
I was thinking if we do reactivate, or when we do reactivate the Engagement Committee, that could be something that we could really look at. Like maybe, I don't know if we want to have a social media presence, but at least thinking about a place that the committee can, or that the commission can make statements and express support, and kind of look into what we're allowed to do and what we're allowed to speak about. That would be something that I'd be happy to research as part of what we look at.
I like the idea of social media. I mean, that's where I get a lot of this information, because I don't watch the news because it's traumatizing. But yeah, I'd love to explore that with you, Jeanette. I know we're on it together, but when you said it, it's like, yes, I'd love to. I just want to make it, to me, it doesn't feel good as a Human Rights Commission and we don't say anything about it. I don't know. That's why I paused, because I don't have the answers. I don't know what's in our purview, what we can and can't do, but I just had to say, I want us to do something.
One related thing that is local, although not directly within our purview, is that the Charlottesville City Schools ended their MOU with the Charlottesville Police Department and now have proposed a police-free model for school safety. And I believe we will be the first school district in the Commonwealth of Virginia, at least, to do this. And one of few in the country to be fully police-free. And we're kind of at a point where the model is there. It's about to be proposed to the school board. So at least as individuals, we can help support that effort within the city schools to remove police from the schools.
Catherine, when they have, because I also can't sit through those school board meetings. I think about it every time, and I'm like, I just can't. It gets me too angry. Next time, do you mind like messaging it to me if that specific topic is on the agenda, so I can?
It will be at the next school board meeting, and I'm happy to send it to you. In fact, I can forward
the next meeting
an email. Give me a second, and I will.
I didn't hear that news. That's wonderful news.
Will tell you. Yes, there, just if you want a little background about it, after many meetings, Andy is also on the committee. I was one of the people on a pretty large committee. After some freewheeling and passion-filled meetings, we came to a place where there's a model in Toronto where these school districts hire, so there are extra adults in the building and they are hired by the school division. They are not police-like, and they are there to provide support for the kids. At the same time, the city schools have increased, sort of separate from this effort, some of their funding for social workers and some other support staff in the buildings. And so there will be no security or safety or police personnel in the elementary schools. And Beaufort and Charlottesville High School will have these newly hired, hopefully developmentally appropriate, trained folks in the buildings, following this model from Toronto. So I don't know, Andy, do you have have I correctly portrayed this?
Yeah, and yes, there was a video that they just put together recently, just yesterday or whenever, that they just sent out to talk about this new model and sort of the framework for that the school board can then vote on. And it seems like a reasonable compromise, because there's definitely been some pushback from some of the school administration, about how to address physical safety in the buildings. So I think this is definitely a good direction that the schools are going. So yeah, definitely having community support and individual support is very helpful to keep this moving.
I just wanted to add in my thoughts to this, when things exploded this summer, it was wonderful to hear from our mayor just acknowledging it. Like, she sent out a really powerful letter, just acknowledged what was happening. And so when I'm thinking of doing something, that is the vein I guess I'm thinking of. I'm just not sure of our purview on that. But thank you for this update. I didn't know about that, so that's good to hear. I see the police officers every day at Jackson Vi. He's more like a guard. He sits out there and drives traffic, but this is really good news to hear.
I think they must still have crossing guards to direct traffic. I'm not sure this will prevent crossing guards, but in the buildings. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I was wondering, Sue, or if anyone knows of other human rights commissions that we could lean into to find out like what the parameters are around advocacy or social media sites. Is there any resources we can lean into?
Okay. We could all attend the state human rights, Virginia Association for Human Rights Councils, Commissions, etc., on June 5th. And I'm part of the planning of that. And that is maybe one of the areas that we could talk about there. I'm actually jumping ahead because that's what I was going to say in the commissioner updates. But there, Jeanette, like you, I'm always thinking, why would we reinvent the wheels when there's an association that has all the human rights commissions involved with them? And I will tell you, pretty much every one of them is different. We're different from any others that I've talked to about how they go about their business, but to see what others do is, for me anyway, very important. I'm going to write that down, that as an issue that might be explored. Anyway, I've jumped ahead, Mary. You can go back to the original agenda.
Well, no, I mean, so that makes a lot of sense, and I appreciate your sharing that information. I do wonder though, like in the immediate aftermath of a killing of a 13-year-old child, if there's a role for the commission to respond. I mean, 13-year-old child is I mean, all the deaths are hard to fathom, but that's, you know, it's pretty hard to experience, and it does feel sort of wrong as a human rights commission to be silent, even though I know that sort of every person here probably is active in some way. So I know it's, you know, these are actions that are taking place, you know, in other cities, but we have police here in Charlottesville, and I'm just wondering, I mean, you know, obviously we also have another sort of commissioner board that deals with the police specifically, but I just kind of want to, you know, ask of you if we feel compelled or called as a commission to make any statement or take any action, and what might that be?
I might add in here, this is a little bit of a tangential thought, but if you're familiar with the work of the Buck Squad in Charlottesville, they've been doing some pretty amazing work. I'm, you know, one way to make a statement is to support alternative efforts. And I think that from what I understand of what they're doing, I've been to one of their meetings and had some interactions with what they're doing. I wonder if there's any way.
Can you describe what they're doing?
Yeah. For those who aren't familiar, the Buck Squad is it's a group not affiliated with police at all, but of mostly men and some women who have some connection to many of the public housing or other subsidized housing neighborhoods. And what often happens is when there's some sort of a conflict, and they would say that most often the things that they interact with are you know, young men getting into some sort of disagreement, drawing guns, so forth. They'll actually show up on site because someone will call them rather than the police, and they'll diffuse the situation so that police don't have to get involved. Nobody gets shot, nobody gets hurt, and they actually work with both parties to come to some sort of agreement to work together and resolve the conflict. So from what I've seen, it's a pretty impressive effort. They actually are putting themselves rather in harm's way for sometimes just being volunteers. I don't think many of them are getting paid even. So just mentioning that, what is it? Purtrell Gilmore is the executive director. I think it is a nonprofit. They do accept donations, but I'm just putting that out there as another way we can show support for alternative methods of resolution to keep police maybe out of certain situations where something bad could happen otherwise.
That's cool, but a lot of what's going on is not that per se with what's going on with police brutality and those type of things. That's, it stops and traffic violations and things like that should not escalate to that point. I'm really concerned. I recently just saw the information about the 13-year-old when I got home this afternoon. So that really hurt because it's, as someone said, it's every day now that I feel like Black men are being attacked, and it's getting to the point to where it's tough to talk to my boys. It's getting tough, but I just want people, and especially if not men, to know that for me as a Black male, I see you. I appreciate you. I appreciate what you do for your family. I see you driving your cars. I see you working with your families. I see you working at your jobs. I see you. And I just don't want you to stop and get down because of what's going on. We're going to be stronger over this. But my concern as a commission is what can we do? And I'm glad we are having this discussion about changing policies or letting people know that some policy changes need to be made, as well as what can we do to change to let people know that these biases are harming minority communities in a very, very difficult way. So, I mean, what can we do as a commission? So I'm glad that we're opening up this discussion tonight. But, we're kind of dipping around, what's kind of right here in our face. So that's just then, again, that's my opinion.
Ernest, I was gonna say,
Thank you
for that. I see you also. It is hard to hold back the emotions of this, all raising 2 Black children also for their safety. And so when I'm saying action for us, statements, I don't even know if we said a statement where that would be. I think it's important to say we do not support racism. We are doing the work of anti-racism work. And to Todd's point, like, we will partner and actively seek organizations like what we were doing with the ad hoc committee. Something needs to be done. And the reason why I'm not coming with ideas, because I don't know the limitations of what we have, but I want more than just a statement. I wanted to say we're going to partner, we're going to actively be out in the communities, we're going to try to change policies, we're going to try to have just space. Like I talked about this with our students at UVA, like just holding space. Like, where do you go when you still have to be? We still all had to come on here today hearing this news. We still have to show up in our jobs. I still have to be a mom. I still have to do the work, and it's exhausting. So how can we not just partner with organizations that are doing the work of police work, but how do we partner with healthcare? Like, I'm concerned about that. This is trauma. This is racial trauma that's happening to us, and we have to keep going. And I'm concerned about our burnout. I'm concerned about just our city. That fear is real. Like, I saw cops today, like, coming to my house. Like, I have no idea the situation. And like, I would not turn into my building because I wanted to see that, like, they're not harming someone. So thank you, Ernest, for that.
But I also want to say, I want to thank all of the allies that are in the room, because I know there are many of you. I appreciate you. And I'm also looking not for those that are going to be standing beside and behind, but those who are going to get in front on the front lines. Because, I mean, we don't have a whole lot, as much power as I think I have or would love to have, I don't have. But you guys that are allies have more of it, because they'll see you before they see me. I will say I'm the most invisible 6'4" black man I've ever seen. There are people who will say that they don't even see me. I'm like, how do you not see me? But you see me when you think I may be doing something wrong. So, and thank you, Jessica. I hear you and I see you.
Thank you so much, both of you, for sharing that. I will say I have a Black 17-year-old son, and I was so relieved that he couldn't get his driver's license during the pandemic. And then he finally did. And so now I watch him drive off in that car and, you know, feel that terror every day. And I don't know what action is appropriate for the commission. I'll just say that because they're, you know, there are all the issues of, you know, what is our purview, what is our jurisdiction, but it feels, I certainly feel called to speak to this moment as a commission, not just as individuals. And I am open to folks' thoughts about how to do that. Lindell, you raising your hand?
So I think it's impossible to stay silent any longer, and I'm not really concerned about what our parameters are or what permission we have. I think we just do something, right? I think the work that we're doing is important, and I think Jessica and Ernest are actually right. We, you know, saying things is important. Doing things is also important. We have to do both, but I don't think we can stay silent now, and I don't. What I don't know is what's the best way to do it, but I don't think we need to wait for permission. I don't think we need to ask for permission. If it's a matter of writing something and releasing it publicly, then we do that, but I think we need to do something.
Policy-wise, one specific piece of work we might want to think about is, and it's maybe too late for this cycle, but we can start the groundwork now for the next budget cycle, is working with groups that are advocating to at least reduce, if not fully defund, the police budget. And there's work going on in odd pockets around town, like the parking commission's interest in removing parking from, you know, why are armed police enforcing parking? So taking that away from the police, I think there's a number of ways that we can work with work that's already going on as a Human Rights Commission to build support the same way. We now have a successful model, right, for that happened with the right to counsel work. I don't know if that's of interest.
My question is, I'm wondering what our new police review board, surely they're talking about this. And are they preparing to say anything? If anybody should, they should. They're not just looking at local, I mean, they're looking at our local police department, but in a context that is broader than just local, I would assume. I don't know what they're doing.
I don't think we need to wait for them or follow them.
Well, I'm not waiting, but I'm just wondering why, you know, are they likely to say anything? I will tell you that I've read a whole lot of stuff, but for some reason, I had this book sitting there, and it's The Hate You Give. And oh my God, I have just started reading that, and it's so pertinent and topical as to what's going on now. And so I'm struggling with what I can do personally, and maybe what we can do as a commission. I don't know. I can't even think of how we would word something. You know, yes, we deplore the use of blah, blah, blah. But what does that do?
Andy?
So I second Catherine's sort of focus on, you know, what are the actual policy and budget and, you know, concrete decisions that different groups are pushing for, making because I feel like defund is one of the most sort of direct ways of addressing over policing, have fewer police. But I'm not sure how we can, we'd be able to do that as a commission necessarily, but I definitely think finding ways to partner with groups that have specific plans in that direction, I would be all for that.
Well, I've heard people say many times that a budget is a statement of, your moral values. And so it does seem like speaking to the budget is about issues of racial justice and equity. Like that feels very appropriate for who we are as a commission. So I guess, Jeanette, go ahead.
Yeah, I wonder if we could start with just like a statement, either an op-ed in the paper or a press release or some kind of just statement of value. Like I don't feel really ready yet. Maybe someone else does, but to speak to all of the policy implications, or the different groups that are working and pushing different issues. But if we could at least start with like looking at the values that the Human Rights Commission supports and putting that behind the context of what is currently happening in the world. And I appreciate you, Lindell, just saying, we don't need to ask permission. So that all of a sudden made me feel like empowered, right? We're the Human Rights Commission, we can make a statement about that. And then to follow up with the research around what initiatives we might want to support.
So it sounds to me like there's kind of two tracks maybe. And one is kind of an immediate statement that we draft and publicize, and two is, I hesitate to say this, but is it a creation of a committee to look at this more deeply and to work with other groups? I mean, this is kind of a large commission to do that. So, so I'm sort of drawn to the idea of a smaller group, but what do folks think about that kind of longer, deeper engagement that's more than just the sort of initial statement?
I think you would need something longer range, because if we're going to make a statement every time something like this comes up, which happens weekly, at least daily sometimes, we would be firing off statements constantly. So taking a look at something in a more broader approach, to me, is a way to go. If it requires another new ad hoc committee.
Lindell?
Yeah, so I think a committee is probably a good idea. I mean, I imagine it might be kind of a large committee, and in some ways I think that this gives us an opportunity to have other meetings than our every third Thursday meeting, because I think that this is an issue that is huge, right? And is not really a subcommittee kind of thing. I mean, we may call it a subcommittee so that we can meet more often. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I think this is an opportunity for us to meet more often and do work in support of some important changes, at least locally, that we can make. So I would be in favor of forming another committee and encourage that it be a large one, that we work together as a group.
Do we have volunteers for such a committee? Oh, look at all those hands. That's so hard.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, I think it could also be part of the community engagement committee. I'm not offering to lead it. I'm just saying like that could be the first step that we take to engage the community around that.
Okay, well, I think we should make a decision about that, right? About whether it's one or two. I actually sort of like the idea of one committee just because, we could just have so many committees. But what do folks think about that, about sort of having those two things kind of as one committee.
I like that. I'm supportive of that idea. I also want to mention, as far as actions, Lindell put in the chat about potentially asking for funding for mental health, specifically related to racial trauma. That's something we can request.
Yeah, emergency funding.
You mean it's part of the budget,
Yeah.
the city budget?
And perhaps, I don't know if there is emergency funding in the city budget, but I think that it's appropriate to ask for it. Not even ask for it, just say it's needed. This is necessary work now, or
So-
money now.
Well, that could go into our kind of initial statement.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I wanted to mention one more thing to Sue's comment.
Can you just hold on one
Yep.
second? Because I want to make sure we captured all the hands that went, there were a bunch of hands that went up, and I want to make sure, Todd, did we get like all of the folks who volunteered for that? We've got Jessica, Lindell, Wolfgang, Jeanette, Andy. Is that, okay? Well, that's a great committee. So, okay, I'm sorry about that. Go ahead.
So I think that to Sue's point about making statements when this happens, I think that that's actually the right thing to do, right? Because if we have a committee, or if we're doing this work, when we need to say it again, we will say this work is important. This needs to be done. I don't think we need to choose when to say it or when not to say it. I think that we have reached a point in which we need to say it all the time.
Agree.
So while I am willing to take a first stab at a draft, I'm also very happy to cede that to somebody else if someone else feels called to craft such a thing. I mean, obviously we would have, internal discussion before finalizing it. So I just throw it out there. If there's someone who feels like this is the thing I want to put to paper, I'm happy to cede that opportunity, or I'll gladly write a first draft that you all can react to. Okay, I'm going to take that as I'll write a first draft.
Please.
But I will share it with you all. Okay. I am
Mary,
yes.
I wanted to say I appreciate you doing that, and I will definitely be supportive of trying to help in that effort as well. So, but I appreciate you, because I know that puts a lot of pressure on you being the chair. When these things happen, we are looking for a statement. But I will definitely be there as support as much as I can in helping to craft.
I appreciate that. I will say that I'm as you know, I'm out of the country, and also working at the same time. So I can imagine that it probably would be Sunday before I have substantial time to actually devote to putting pen to paper. But I can definitely get a draft done on Sunday if that's, okay with the commission. Okay.
Sorry, can I just add one more thing?
Yeah, of course.
After you write yours, if other people want to add, I think it might be helpful to have more than one voice, because I can see there might be an impassioned voice that speaks to, the trauma of what that means to them when they see that, the logical voice that speaks to, this is happening and these are why. So it might be nice if different people write pieces that we could put together as well.
Yeah, okay. I will, I find that it's useful often to have a first draft, even if we end up completely ripping it apart and creating something completely different, but having something to react to is often easier than starting. So I will commit to getting something out probably from my voice, Sunday, and I welcome your edit suggestions and the thoughts and feelings of kind of everybody here. And I know this is lots of our conversations are hard and we deal with challenging issues, but this one is particularly hard, I think, emotionally. So thank you for raising that. I think we're back, Todd, to comments by the public. Is that okay? If you have a comment, members of the public, you can raise your hand on the video, or if you're on a phone, press *9.
And Molly has her hand raised, and I'm going to go ahead and give you the floor. And then so does Don Gathers. He did. Molly, you're live.
I just wanted to thank you, Lindell, for saying you're not going to wait for permission to make a statement. I think police murdering people is a human rights problem and is a human rights violation. And that is firmly within your purview to say, that's not okay. That's not what we stand for here. I don't think you have to wait for somebody to tell you you're allowed to condemn police violence. And I appreciate that. That's all.
Thank you.
And Don, I'm going to give you the floor. There you go.
Thank you so much, and thank you all, Commission. I just want to echo the sentiments of the previous speaker. Anytime and every time that we have these issues that pop up anywhere in the country, a statement needs to be made, and I don't care how frequently that is. If it's every day, twice a day, then we need to take a stance on it. And you all as a commission, as a Human Rights Commission, need to be out in front of that. That's my personal opinion. And if it's not you, then who else will? So anytime that this issue of racism, of hatred rears its ugly head, because that's what it is racism, you all need to step up, step to the forefront and say something that's meaningful, that is explicit, and that is direct. It can't be sugar-coated. You can't make a candy apple out of it. You've got to be blunt about exactly what it is. And if that means calling the police force what they are, then that's what needs to happen. That's why you're impaneled. That's why you're appointed. That's what you're there for. And people look to you to lead in this particular issue. So please do so. And again, the frequency of it should not matter. That as often as it happens, something needs to be said about it, because we see it continue to happen. So as frequently as it happens, get out, get in front of it. The people will get behind you, but the people shouldn't be leading you or pulling you into this fight. It should be the inverse, should be the other way around. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Gathers. Do we have any other comments from the public, Todd?
That seems to be it for now.
And so next on our agenda is Commissioner's response to matters from the public. I would just say I deeply appreciate the comments from both Molly and from Don Gathers. I think that they are spot on, and to the extent that I expressed questions or reluctance about our jurisdiction, I think the answer is completely correct, Lindell, that who cares? We shouldn't wait, and we shouldn't ask that question, and we should state the truth. So I open it up for other commissioners to respond to the matters from the public.
Yeah, I just wanted to say the same thing. Thank you, Donna Molly, for that. I feel strongly that we have to say it, and we have to say it 100 million times. I feel it's a need that we say it. And where I feel difference from other organizations is that some organizations just saying it, they're not doing it, but it is our charge to address these issues. And so that's why I don't mind if we have to do 1,000 statements. It's important because we're doing the work. So thank you, Molly and Don, for your comments.
Any other comments? Todd, I'm sorry here. My computer's failing me just a little bit. I can't seem to bring up the window with the agenda. I think we've reached the end of the agenda, but can you remind me if that is accurate or if there are other matters on the agenda? Or are we at updates from commissioners?
Updates from commissioners, you're right.
Okay. Sorry about that. My computer's being a little funky here, and I normally print it out, but I'm not at home, so I didn't have a printer. So we are at updates from commissioners.
I already told you, I'm assuming we're in that everybody on the commission is now in the database for VAHR. I don't know if you've received any communication from them in the past 2 months? No?
Nothing.
Okay, I will check that. But you will be getting a notice invitation, and it'll be a virtual meeting again on June 5th. It's a Saturday. It's mainly because the bylaws say that the general meeting, annual meeting will be the first Saturday in June, end of story. So that's when it'll be, and I'll make sure that everybody is noticed on it, and I'll just make sure everybody is. I thought that you were, but apparently you're not. They've got your names and contact information. I do not know why you're not getting anything.
Thank you, Sue.
I have an update.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Many of you might have heard already, but the organization that I work with, Cultivate Charlottesville, has been working with the city council on the Food Equity Initiative, which is an initiative for council for the city to look closer at how food equity is represented through our planning and action. So food isn't mentioned at all in the comprehensive plan currently. And so seeing it as a human right, we're working with council to integrate that more into the plans. So we're just launching a Food Equity Initiative policy platform, and I'll share the link to that. We're going to be presenting to council on May 17th. And if you're interested in supporting, it includes there are 6 key planks of the platform that each speak to different areas that affect food equity. And then within each plank, there are a list of different action recommendations that emerged out of broad stroke community conversations and meetings with city departments. So there's the link. We'd love for people to sign on to the platform. Chantel will be presenting at our community roundtable on the 29th to kind of introduce the platform. So thank you. I just wanted to let people know about that.
I would like to say that I feel remiss that I didn't mention at the beginning of the meeting that we're beginning the month of Ramadan, and wanted to wish happy Ramadan to the Muslim members of council and to the Muslim members, community members. Ramadan Mubarak. Any other updates from commissioners? I believe that takes us to the end of the meeting. I managed to get my agenda to come back up. Thank you all so much. I think this is a really, really productive meeting, and I think we have lots of great work that is on our plate to do. And I will certainly be in touch soon. Any other closing comments or questions before we adjourn the meeting? Okay, thanks to you all. I'll send you all a copy of a draft letter for you to react to over the weekend. Okay. Thank you. Have a good evening, everybody. Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks, folks. Have a good night.
Thank you.